we're afraid of the dark is because what's in the dark, we don't know.
Exactly. And, it's one of those things that I heard someone say that was what their dad had taught them. When they would ask
Hmm.
if he was afraid of anything or if he was afraid of the dark, how could he, why did he lock the door and do all these other things? And he told them that he wasn't afraid of the dark. He was afraid of what he could not see in the dark.
Hmm.
I'm, the same analogy. I just,
Hmm.
I find that interesting because I'm not generally afraid of being alone or being in the dark or anything like that. My worst nightmare are snakes. So,
Right.
if there were a snake in the dark, well, then I would be afraid of the dark. But
Right.
it's just really fascinating how the human psyche works with that.
Hmm. Well, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. Um, so many people in the paranormal they are they're caught up in tunnel vision, and they are all focused on dead people, the ghosts, dead people. Oh well, let's go to this place because a lot of people died there, so it must be haunted. Or that place is old and abandoned; it must be haunted. Or let's go to the graveyard because God knows graveyards are crazy haunted, which is all nonsensical. And I mean, but just speaking of graveyards, I mean, seriously, why would you stick around in a graveyard? Um,
I don't understand
you
that
know,
either because there's no logical reason unless
mhm,
you told somebody you would meet them there or something. I don't know.
right? That you know, there's so people get so fixated on dead people, creepy things, scary things, and they forget that the paranormal is not like watching a Hollywood horror movie or a TV show. And matter of fact, what most people, I mentioned tunnel vision because so very little of the paranormal actually involves dead people.
Truth.
That so much more of the paranormal is directly linked to living people. But yet, a lot of people in the paranormal forget about the living people. They're focused on the dead people whom where a lot of people died, and all this. And you had to think about it. One of the craziest things that I see teams do is these people will say, every night, it it might be the wife that calls us. Usually the men don't call us. Usually it's the wife because the husband's not going to talk about it to anybody most of the time. And they'll call us up and they'll say that every time it's just the kids are when the kids leave, it's just me and my husband sitting here at about 4 every evening. This happens. So most teams, out there that you see, especially the TV types, they they say, "Oh well, great. I'll tell you what. We're going to come out about midnight. We're going to have you and your husband leave, and we're just going to check out the house and see what happens." Well, what's wrong with that picture? Um, they're saying when certain people are there at a certain time, a certain event happens. So you're going to toss out every single thing that has happened at the exact at and try to get rid of the people who could very well be the trigger. If it's happening when when person A is there at this specific time and under these specific conditions, then guess what? You need to recreate that as close as you can to observe it.
Absolutely, you do. And people just don't do that. I don't understand that
Mhm.
either.
Right. I mean it would be the same as
Goodness gracious. Hello there.
Well, hello. I apologize for that. That was the connection on my end.
Oh, okay. Well,
So,
maybe there are gremlins running around rampant.
right. Yeah, the bad thing about where I live is our internet service out here is terrible. So, had to get off of it and switch over to the cellular, and now we are good to go.
Fantastic. I think that is just an interesting thing. And we have
Mhm.
our haunted spirit guide in chat. They were talking about possibly the land being haunted as opposed to the homes or
Hmm.
the individuals, which would take us back to stone tape and
Right.
other things of that nature. And talking about cemeteries being built on some haunted locations, perhaps ground that was already tainted. And Southern
Hmm.
Spirit Guide, our friend
You know,
Lewis, said at least some of the haunted
mhm.
cemeteries that he's encountered in his research seem to be haunted because they had been disturbed. What say
Mhm.
you?
Well, that is very good. And by the way, anybody that if you're not checking out, I finally got to meet Lewis for the first time last night during the
I didn't know that
investigation.
was your first time.
We'd talked a little bit over the internet, but that was the first time actually getting to meet Lewis in person. Super great guy. Go check out Southern Spirit Guide. Some of the stuff that he writes, puts out there, it's awesome. So definitely go check him out. Tell him Frank sent you. That's but I absolutely believe that yes, a cemetery. I do think that does happen. That maybe they're established on ground that's already haunted for various reasons, but that is a very good point that he puts up about it being disturbed. You know, you have to think about it. When do you hear so many reports of activity happening? When people say, "Well, yeah, this house is about 60 years old. Nobody's ever had anything happen in here." Oh, we moved in, and all of a sudden things are going crazy. And when you talk to the people, well, you find out what's the first thing that people usually do when they buy a place and move in. They start renovating, they
Renovating.
start customizing it, and they create this disturbance. Well, and it's kind of like I'd mentioned earlier, about people thinking just because a place is old or abandoned that it must be haunted. When, I can't tell you how many times I've ran into a place that was brand new. First people that had moved in hadn't been there but just a couple months, and nothing ever happened. No kind of history there, but they move in and the house is haunted. Um, and what do both of those scenarios have in common is there's a disturbance. There is something. It's like the potential energy has always been there, but it was at rest. It's just like a circuit with, you have that battery plugged up, it's charged up, it's ready to go, but nothing's happening until something comes through and moves that switch over
That's right.
to initiate it. And I think it's very much the same with a lot of the haunted locations. Um, I think a lot of times it gets down to a level of just pure and simple. The geology of certain ground has more potential to store energy. And I'm not talking about like psychic energy or anything like that. I mean literal energy which our minds operate off of, which um, there's so many ways that we are connected with biological energy that we don't really think about. But when you have any kind of disturbance, yes, it can trigger ripples, so to speak.
I'm going to
Um,
interrupt you
mhm.
because we're going to go ahead and take our scheduled breaks because we are redoing this and we are up against one. So we're going to be gone for about 3, and we will be right back. And don't forget, we have Brenda's question for Frank to answer too, so this is going to be good.
Oh, yeah.
You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Welcome back to Fate Magazine Radio, and we are here with my friend Frank Lee, who is one of the most brilliant paranormal researchers that I know or have really ever met. When it comes to the technical side, there's no one better. And when it comes to the creativity of experiments to do to test theories that he comes up with, again, no one more brilliant. I have to say that Brandon Smith, who is with the Tennessee Wraith Chasers, is pretty close. Y'all run kind of neck and neck. He's pretty smart too. But I told him about you, and he was like, oh, wow. So you may be getting an email soon. But I do want to ask you Brenda's question because she has been waiting patiently through all these things. Are you up for it?
Sure thing, absolutely.
Are you a little afraid?
Well, you know that. With it coming from Brenda, I'm definitely going to be a little nervous, but there's no way that I can let her down. So go ahead and fire it at me.
Thank you, Dick. It's actually a really good question, and we haven't even approached it yet in this conversation. But she would like to know what was the first thing that ran its creepy, cold fingers down your spine and made you a believer in the possibility of paranormal activity and got you started in your research?
Well, you know, I was always curious about things. This goes back as far as I can remember. You know, and I even had a near-death experience when I was a child, which is really where it started. When I was about 6 years old, I had been put in the hospital for a relatively minor procedure, and I had an adverse reaction to the anesthesia. As a result of that, I was actually flatlined for right at 6.5 minutes. I mean, they, they were about ready to give up on me.